DIY pages allow you to create a basic online donation page that is linked to a giving option. As you'll see, the process is fairly intuitive once you understand the basics, and it allows you to be as creative or as basic as you would like. Once you're logged in, you'll click the Pages link at the top of the page here. Now you'll see a list of the existing templates. You can choose one of these and use it as is or modify it if necessary by clicking the Edit button here on the right. Or you can create a new template from scratch, and that's what we'll do here. I'll click the Add New Page button. First, I need to give it a title, and I'm just going to call it Training Page. Next, we have to choose a page type. I'll choose Simple Giving Page. We'll cover the other three options here in a separate video. And now I'll click Save New Page. Now, to edit the page, we need to find it here on our list and then click the Edit button. On the right, we have a beginning template with several of the elements called controls displayed on this page. The first thing we need to do, however, is link this page to a giving option by clicking in that field and selecting one that we've previously set up. I'm going to choose the puppy and dog projects for now. A giving option is a project or anything you would like to offer to the donor for donations, and that will be covered in a separate video as well. Notice now that this has pulled in some of the elements from the giving option. For example, here's the photo that was set up in the giving option, the text that goes along with that, and so forth. So that we see that our template is now linked to that giving option. Below the giving option field, we have the Live Page field. It shows the URL that you will eventually use for this page. You can link to this page from your website, include it in an email, a newsletter, etc. Any place you want to put this where donors can make a donation. Any gifts to this page will link back to the settings that you've set up in the giving option. I've found that it's best to use this URL during the setup process to see exactly what the page will look like. So I'll click here and hit Control-C on my keyboard to copy it. Now I'll open a new tab, which is just a little bit off your screen, and I'll click in the URL field, click Control-V and enter to display the page. And now we see what our page looks like. As I mentioned earlier, the elements on the page are called controls, and there are some here to get you started. For now, I'm going to turn most of them off so that we can walk through the process of setting them up. I'll do that by right-clicking and choosing Hide Control. I can also do this by sliding down to the controls area on the left and changing the switches from on to off simply by clicking on them. And now we have a blank canvas. Let's start by adding your company logo. I'll click the banner logo switch to on, and we see it show up here on the right. By default, it's showing the logo that you've uploaded previously as part of the company setup page. Notice that it's a little distorted. We need to change the width and height of the display so that it displays the way it was created. I already know what those dimensions are, so I'll right-click on the control and choose Edit HTML. I'll change the height to 62 and the width to 237, and when I click Close, we see that the logo now looks a little bit better. We can also drag the outlines of the control to resize. However, this first method is a little more exact. Now let's add the banner by turning on that control. The banner is automatically being pulled in from your previously company setup. but we could change some of the way it's displayed. I'll right click on that and choose Edit HTML. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the font. And then I'm going to change the color, just something that we can see what it stands out there. On this page, I really don't need the tagline, and that's the help local shelter animals. That was part of the setup, or original setup as well. And I'm going to turn that off by right clicking on the control again, and this time choosing properties. And then on the tagline switch, I'm going to change that from visible to close. And the tagline now goes away. Now, by the way, you may have noticed that as I've made changes, I'm not saving them. That's because they're saved automatically. Now, let's back up a little. We've been adding controls to a page. The page itself is predefined for us. Notice the thin border around the outside of the work area. That's the boundary of our web page. I can make changes to that by right-clicking anywhere in the white area and selecting Edit HTML. By default, it starts with the height being 1200 pixels and the width being 900. We can change that if we want to make the page bigger or smaller. We can also change the background color by clicking the drop down and selecting a color. I'm going to change it to white for now. By default, it's transparent and takes on the color of the background page or the background color of the page itself. And now I'll close that. So let's look at what we've created so far. I'm going to switch over to my other tab, and I'm going to click on refresh. And so you see the white area here in the center of the page. We can also select a background for the entire browser window, this gray area here. So let's go back to the work area, and on the left we can expand the page background section. Here are several background images that you can select from. You can also add one to the library by clicking the Add button at the bottom of the page. Pressing this button will walk you through the process of browsing for the graphic file on your computer and uploading it to your library. I'm just going to go ahead and click on one that's already here. When I do that, it applies the background to the work area only, but I want it to be the background for the entire page. So here at the top, I can choose to make the background 100% of the width of the page, and so I'll check that box here. So let's look and see what that's done. So I'll switch back to my page and click refresh again. And so now we see we have that bluish background across the entire browser window. We can also choose a background color for the entire browser window by selecting a color from the background color field. So let me uncheck that and then go to the page background color, and we'll select something a little bit different. So I'll just change it to this color. Again, we can switch back, hit refresh, and take a look at what that looks like. As I mentioned earlier, there are controls that pull in text and photos from your giving option. Let's take a look at a couple of those. For example, we saw the giving option image before. I'm going to go ahead and turn that one on, and we can see that it has pulled that image in from our giving option. And again, I can right click on that to make it a little bit larger. I'm just going to go ahead and drag some of the outlines here of the control just to make it a little bit bigger. We also have here the giving option description, and I'll turn that on, and so again that's pulling text in from the giving option, and I can size that, and I can style that text as well. We'll look at styling text here in a minute, but I can also change the way it looks here on the page here. And then we've got other options like the giving option title. I can turn that on, and so it gives me the title again, pulling that in from the giving option. However, you can also add images or text that are not necessarily coming from the giving option. And we can do that by using the add generic image control here, and we can have as many of these as we want. So I can just click add to turn on one of those boxes. And so when I do that, I get this little control up here in the upper left hand window, and I'm going to pull that down here where we can work on it a little bit. To get my image into that window, I'm going to right click and choose properties. Now I can go to the image gallery, and it shows a list of the images that I have previously uploaded, or I can also click on add additional image here to again browse my computer and upload the image. I'm just going to go ahead and use this one. I double clicked on it there, and now I can click close, and you see that it has deposited that image. However, it's pretty small, so I'm going to make that bigger as well. So I'll just drag to make that larger, and again, just as we saw earlier, I can size that to make that anything I want to make that. Now we can add some generic text, and I do that by clicking on that button. Again, it's going to put that control in the upper left hand corner, and so I'll just drag it down here where I want to work on it. And first thing I want to do here then is add some text to that field. So I'm going to right click, choose properties, and now I can begin to type. I also have here at the top a button bar that has some buttons that are similar to what you might see in a text processor or word processor like Microsoft Word. So I can bold things. For example, I could underline the text. I could highlight something here and change the color of this text if I wanted to make that anything I want to make it. So I can kind of style this text a little bit here in the box itself. I'll go ahead and click on close, and now we have the text on the box. Now I can style it here as well. So I can right click, choose edit HTML, and now I can change the text. We'll just change it to something different just so we can see the changes here. I can change the font size, and I'll change the color to white so that we can see it, and then I'll click close. Now while we're here, we also need to talk about layering. All of the elements on the page, the controls on the page, exist in one of three layers. They are the bottom, the middle, and the top. By default, this page background, the kind of the reddish area here, is at the bottom. This white area that we put in on top of that, the actual page that we're working on, is at the bottom as well. When we add a new control, the new control is automatically set to top. So in other words, it's sitting on top of this white area. But sometimes we want to have a middle layer for some reason. For example, now this text, because of the way I entered it here, is actually sitting on top of this, but sometimes this layer might be covering up this layer. And so to switch that around, I can right click on the control and choose layer, and then put this one in the middle. So in other words, now this photo is sitting between the white area and my generic text here, so that we can now make sure that this generic text is always going to show up on top of the photo. There are several controls that have some functionality built into them. For example, I'll turn on one-time login or register and the payment method control. Let me move these down a little bit for us so we can see them a little better. And so here you can see that this is the area where the donor will enter their name and address, and this is the area where they'll put in their payment information. Let's take a look at that on the page and see what that looks like. I'll hit refresh again. So obviously the donor will be able to access these and enter their name and address, choose their payment method, etc. The donation amount control gives you amount buttons that the donor can choose from. So let me turn that on, and we'll move that so we can get a good look at it here. You can change the amounts by right-clicking and choosing gift handles. And so here we see that we can change the amounts. We can take away buttons if we wanted to by turning these into zeros, or add a couple of extra buttons here. We can also change the button alignment. So right now it's in a horizontal mode. We can change that to vertical so that they're sitting on top of each other. We can change the button size from medium to small or large. And we can change the button color, and I'll just change it to red for now. And again, we'll click close to see what that looks like. And then the donor also has the option of filling in this field. So if they don't like one of those options that we're giving them, they can put whatever amount they want in that gift amount field. The basic donation control adds the Make Donation button that finalizes the process. So you'll probably want to put that near the bottom of the page. I'll go ahead and turn that on, and we'll slide down the page, and there's our button that finishes the whole process. And so we can just kind of put that in place somewhere there so that the donor can click that once they've entered their credit card information. At the bottom of the page, we also have some options for tributes and promotional codes and pledges. Those controls will allow the donor to make a pledge or an ongoing donation, for example. Let me turn that one on, and we'll slide that down here somewhere so we can see that again. So here the donor can choose to make a one-time donation or a monthly donation or an annual donation, and then if they choose anything other than one time, they can choose a duration, how long that pledge will last, and they can also choose the day of the month that they want their credit card or their EFT to process on. The tribute control allows the person to make the donation as a tribute or in memory of some person or a pet, or etc., etc. And let me drag that one down here where we can see that. And again, the person can choose the type of tribute that they want that to be, and then they can put the name of the person or the pet in that area as well, and that will all be recorded as part of the donation. We also have a generic link option, and that simply allows you to add a link to a web page or some other page that you want the donor to be able to go to. We again click the add, and we can add as many links to this page as we want to, and we'll get that here, and I'm going to drag it over here kind of just in a blank area so we can see it. And so to use this, the first thing I'm going to do is right click on this and choose properties, and enter the anchor text. So in other words, this is what the donor is going to see. So let's just say we want them to go back to our home page here, and so I can now put in the link itself, and of course I could copy and paste a link into that if I wanted to. Go ahead and close that, and then I can style it just as we've styled all the other options here. So I'm going to choose something completely different, and we'll just make it that. It's good enough there. Let me go back and change the height of that a little bit more. And so now we have our link, and we can style that. Again, if we don't like the way it looks, we can put it somewhere that's going to make sense on the page. But basically, we can use that wherever we want to place it. So let's go over and look at what we've got so far. I've just been kind of dragging things around and not really styling them too much, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we end up with here. Now we have this link here as a text link, but we can also turn any of these photos or a photo of a button, for example, into a link itself. So let's go back to our page here, and I'm going to go back to this control, and I'll just drag it over here so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to right click and choose Edit HTML, and in the background image field I'm going to choose an image for this background, and I'll find the one I need here. So I found the photo that I need as a background image for that, and I'm going to go ahead and click close now. And now we have this button that has a background image, and so I'm going to resize this just a little bit. I'm going to change the color, and I'm also going to change the text alignment to center. And so now we have a control that looks a little bit more like a button. Again, let me go over to the page and refresh here. And so we've got a button there. You also find controls for tracking progress towards your goal for a giving option, as well as some for tracking donor stats, etc. I won't cover all those here. Once you have the controls you want turned on and placed on the page, you can now drag them around the work area just as you've seen me do until you get it to look exactly the way you want the page to look. To publish the page, you can click the URL we mentioned earlier and copy it and then use it as a link on your website. Again, send it out in an email, put it into newsletters, any way that you want to communicate this to donors and give them that opportunity to make a donation. Again, donations made through this page will be recorded in the data with the fund and appeal that you've previously set up in the giving option record. Once the page is looking the way you want, you're ready to go. And as I said, it's saved, and you're now ready to publish this page.